We'll just wait for. Okay, thanks a lot. So thanks, welcome everybody to the first of what we hope will be a very exciting series of online dialogues, discussions, and webinars on alternative learning, pedagogies, courses, etc. from different parts of the world, which is being organized by PeDAGoG, which is the post-development academic activist global group, Educere, the Ecoversities Alliance, and the Global Tapestry of Alternatives. So it's wonderful to actually have two dear colleagues who have been leading a really exciting alternative learning exercise called Living Utopias, Pallavi and Sujit, both of whom I met in both academic and activist contexts. I'm Ashish Kothari. I work as part of the core team of the Global Tapestry of Alternatives and PeDAGoG. So I think that's about it. Pallavi and Sujit, over to you. Please take it forward. And I guess you can also explain what the structure is going to be, when the discussion will happen, etc. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ashish, our connector of connectors. And definitely, I mean, I think it's exciting for us to present and also review and reflect on our own work because of this opportunity. And the structure today is we decided to talk less, and we have 15 minutes amongst us, and we will try to keep at it. And then if there are any remaining things, we can answer them in a question answer session or a discussion. So here I go. I am sharing a link in the chat box, and I will refer to it when I come to it. And I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share. Yeah. Okay. So just a minute. Yep. So yeah, so here we are 3 networks, hopefully trying to see how we can learn from each other. And I just want to share that Living Utopias is offered at 3 levels. It's an educational initiative. And the first level is of a semester-wide course for MA Development and MA Public Policy students. We started in 2019, and we've done 4 such courses in the university space. The second level is where we do an intensive residential course for out of university audience. Anybody is interested in these ideas is welcome. We do not have any age bars. We've had a 13-year-old, we've had a 60-year-old, and we've had anybody interested walking in, signing up. We don't give out certificates, assessments, and this has changed slightly post-pandemic because the university, if the university sponsors this course, we have to adhere to some university guideline. But we managed to do that without the university giving us structures four of these kinds before that happened. And the third level of how we offer this course is of a shorter duration, and it's quite customized. And we try to reach out to groups which are working with indigenous populations in India or grassroots level organizations. And that level, Sujit will talk more about it. And I'm just going to talk about the first 2 levels of this course. I can see, I mean, I'm not looking at the chat, but you have, yeah, okay, all right. Okay, so this is our logo. It was designed by one of our, one of our favorite students who actually took part in one of the first Living Utopias course, Shweta. And as you can see from the logo, you can sort of see the vision that we are trying to promote. And this is the list on the right-hand side of all the kind of topics that we talk about in a full semester-wide course, as well as a short online course. We have a little bit of a bias towards Gandhi and Tagore in the way we design our post-development, these kind of alternatives and Living Utopias. So the why of this course. There are some official objectives, but before I begin to read that out to you, I wanted to say that, and especially to honor Gustavo Esteva, the late Gustavo Esteva, There was a speech that he shared last year in the South-South Sustainability Forum. And that speech was hope, keys, and friendship are the key for survival of the new era. And so I feel, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, okay, it's okay to talk about the dying world, but it's also okay to look at, and it's imperative to look at the new world that is birthing in the womb of the old. And it is that intention with which we started out curating a course like this, because we wanted to talk about new, hopeful, transformative solutions. And we started looking around for where they are and started putting it together in an academic space, but holding on to the pedagogy of storytelling. And that has resulted in interesting spaces that I wanted to talk about today. So officially, these are our objectives. So it's also a perspective about what we call the crisis of industrialism. We want to give a sense of urgency that, the world is burning and, we have to do things faster. We definitely focus that you can't just change only one sphere of civilization. These are interlinked. So if political transformation happens, it has an impact on economy, on the technology, on the society. And this has been something that we keep repeating. We wanted to showcase various living, actual, real examples. And the reason why I'm giving these synonyms with the actual real has an interesting history, because we started naming this course as The Future is Here when we started. And a lot of people have an opinion about why we use the word utopias. And it was a bit of academic jostling, which university committees are wont to. I mean, this is something that happens, and they had a lot of objections about titling the course. And at that time, I remember we also had shown the course document to Ashish, and he had also suggested that we should name it as Living Utopias. So the real utopias, the actual utopias that are happening, and we have to keep defending this word, and we just defended it yesterday as well. So yeah, to showcase and to provide hope. So that's a pedagogy of hope. I think Melanie, if I'm not mistaken, who's in the audience right now, also had something around pedagogy of love very recently when the pandemic started, and there was some discussion around that. So it's very similar. It's a pedagogy of hope and support. And what we ideally want to do is support organizations and support transformative actions. We have not succeeded much in that second part of the objective, but otherwise, this is how we decided on why we wanted a course like this. So it is a course of activism as well as a perspective building course. How? So there is a lot of oral storytelling, some field visits, a lot of songs, a lot of poetry. We design our own audiovisual materials. We curate, we use slides, we use short films, we have hand-drawn charts, posters. We have tried to go beyond English to try to attract a multilingual audience. India has several languages, and it's we are limited by the languages we both know, but we are trying something out. Because we had a lot of information that we pull out from Gandhian ideas. We actually designed a Gandhi textbook, because there is a plethora of information on Gandhi and his ideas. We wanted the students who get inspired by him for transformative solutions to look at him in a certain way. So we created that book. We have simple, short one-page write-ups on stories. And of course, some of our star activities are to involve people coming from different parts of the world. So yeah, we've pulled in Ashish many times, but we also have Extinction Rebellion people. We've serendipity made us find somebody in India from the Amish community. Yeah, we managed to get somebody online who had worked in the Zapatista region, and she came in and embellished all our talk on Zapatistas. And very recently, in fact, last week, we had somebody who's traveling in India right now who gave a talk on the Rojava and his role as a volunteer in talking about direct democracy. So those have been some star highlights for us. Okay. Okay, I think I've skipped some things. Yeah, this is just some pictures to show you, some hand-driven charts, we sometimes put them up in the classrooms when we are talking about it. That's on the left is the Gandhi notebook that we created. And on the right are some ways to imagine what a good society can be and what are the indicators for that. I wanted to highlight one thing that has worked really, really well. So we had curated a lot of Living Utopia topics around the world. I have 61 topics at this point, and I'm just put a screenshot there just to give you a sense. So the students do term papers or presentations, they do their own research, and it's not us telling them. They actually go on the internet, find out, learn more about it, and they present what they have found out that very year. So they do get a sense that, oh, things are possible, things are happening, and they didn't know about it, and now they know about it. So it's not like we are telling them a fairy tale, but they do manage to find things on their own. This was an interesting project, and I will then move on to the second level. This happened in our university. We managed to, some of the NGOs, the non-government organization, which is a very well-known national rural development organization in India, got inspired by some of the stories that we tell in Living Utopias and decided that in the space of an action research project, they are going to carve out something and try things which are communitarian, which are around conviviality, about ecological education, about ecological agriculture. So this sort of linkage worked for a while. There was funding from the university. They also sponsored our visits as faculty to the NGO field sites. They chose 3 villages in India, again of indigenous populations, and some things did happen. And I can speak more about it in the discussion session when we begin. But for now, this is, I think it's worth thinking of this model if you are in a university space and want to work further. My second level of Living Utopias that I want to talk about before I hand over to Sujit is these short 1-week courses. They're residential, they're intensive. They offer us a chance to do many things, including watching films together, a lot of informality around tea breaks and lunch breaks, and a lot of friendships that get forged. A very interesting kind of people come. They happen in different locations in India. And because we used to choose locations which were actually functioning alternatives, the participants could see things happening where they were set up. So here are some examples. I'm just going to show you a few pictures. So here was one that happened in Odisha in India in one of the settings. Here is, I mean, we do also have classrooms, but here we were having an interaction with somebody who had initiated a setup of rainwater harvesting in a large gated community. And so we were learning what he has been able to do. If you see, some of you might be early members of PeDAGoG, you will see Brandon here, who was the initial coordinator of PeDAGoG. So this happened in the north of India, again, a setting which is promoting ecological agriculture as well as local food from that region. And the fourth one, before the pandemic, we had it in the Gandhi Ashram, which is Sevagram. And here they actually went to a field visit to see organic cotton being revived and organic dyeing happening. So this short 1 week sort of is more intensive and more exciting, but has a lot of limitations because we keep reflecting on what kind of impact have we been able to do as teachers and educators. So a very concrete impact has been 3 Living Utopias initiatives started by participants of these short courses. One, Zapatista style, somebody has started an educational experiment in an indigenous space in India. The second has been an organic farmers market, and which is in its 3rd year in a city in India. And it was her as well who took the initiative to start a slow roll kind of a campaign, just akin to what Detroit was doing. And she started it. So here are some pictures. You know, if you can see that ride slow, grow slow together. This is an urban city in India, Bhopal. And on the right is a poster that just got shared last week, which is the 3rd year that this organic food festival is being celebrated. So these are some ideas that also got traction because of the Living Utopias ideas that she attended in our courses. Another one, and another by a woman, is this fantastic experiment. She is coming out with children's books that highlight the lifestyle of the indigenous populations in the place where she is, and also having a school which is unlike a normal school and agroecology curriculum. So she derives a lot of ideas from Zapatistas. So these are two solid initiatives, and that's it. The other kind of impact that we thought we have been able to do is that people take back these stories to their own communities in different languages. That was something we really wanted them to do. It's been limited. So 2 have happened in a university in Gujarat and 1 in a community setting. Somebody, just as an assignment, wrote a fictional short story of one of our, highlighting one of our main star stories of Living Utopias. So yes, and now I just invite Sujit to come over and tell us about the 3rd level. And just before, because I will stop the presentation now, I just wanted to show you that this happens with indigenous groups. And can you see the Zapatista, and the thing that they are saying is Ya Basta with their hands. So it's one of the most, there's so much of chutzpah in the story and how they also connect with it. It's quite interesting to watch. And I caught this guy actually drawing a snail in his notebook. And these are some of the students who have not done even high school. So these youth have not finished school education. But these kind of ideas really click with them, and they remember, and they try to articulate in their own way. And in the pandemic, we tried a very similar thing with an online space. It had a lot of limitations, but I'll let Sujit talk about it. So here you are, Sujit. You'll have to unmute, Sujit.
Can you hear me? Pallavi, can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say something about a truncated version of Living Utopias, which Pallavi mentioned, which we call LU++. So here we concentrate on 4 stories. The Zapatistas, which we show as a movement for all aspects of a good society, which is opposite of industrialism. The second story is of Mendalekha village in India. It's direct and consensus-based democracy and the commoning of land, water, and forests. The third story is about the revived kibbutz of Israel with their community-based radical socialism. And the 4th story is of the Amish of USA, their rejection of individualism, and also rejecting much of the material marvels of industrial civilization. So from 2017 till today, we have tried this LU++ 7 times, out of which 2 are ongoing, and I'm quite deeply involved in them right now. The participants of these 7 courses have consisted of 5 NGOs and 2 NGO networks, all of them working predominantly with indigenous communities. Out of these 7, 5 are mostly confined to one state of India, and only 2 work in multiple states. So based on previous 5 experiences of this particular variant of Living Utopias between 2017 and 2021, where we did not get our desired outcomes to the extent we would have liked. So let me briefly describe our latest attempt, started in January this year, with an NGO in the state of West Bengal, where I'm situated right now. So more than 100 staff of this NGO have attended all the 8 sessions once a week, 3 hours online. This time our pedagogic strategy has been that before the first day's class, we sent a 1-page paper titled ideal village for today in bullet points and invited reactions. There was a huge response in class 1. There were many objections and disagreements to the points in our paper. Now, these were of two kinds. One, this is not right, especially the stress on radical economic equity, but also what they termed as being anti-nation state and anti-government. And the second kind of objections were that this is too ideal for today and it is not possible. This was on the first day, right, of the course. Now, over the next 7 classes, we discussed in detail these 4 stories by first sending them a 1 to 2 page bullet points of the stories to be read before they come to class. After these 8 online sessions, 2 weeks back, I have sent the 1-page paper on ideal village again. But this time there is a small addition. In bracket, I have written which point we got from which of the 4 stories. So now the participants want a face-to-face last session and have demanded a homework which will prepare them for this last interaction so that some concrete actionable work can emerge. So I have given them the homework, and just half an hour before this meeting, they called to say that they would like to have this whole day workshops on 11th and 12th of this month in 2 districts separately, and one of the districts with all indigenous villages. So if things go well, our next task might be to see how to equip these NGO staff so that they can carry out a continuous ideological and practical dialogue with their selected village communities, which would mean collaboratively creating many kinds of materials with these course participants. So I think I'll stop here now, and we would like to open for discussions, and we can add some things later on as we start the discussion. Yeah, I think. Yeah, anyone who would like to?
Yeah, Laura is raising her hand.
Yeah, Laura is raising her hand. Laura, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. It's just because I joined from my own computer, I can't see you all, and it makes it a little bit difficult to know how to participate. Sorry about that. But thank you very much for the presentation. It's so interesting to hear all the work you've done. And you seem to be a bit disappointed in your presentation. You said that you could not achieve all the things you had hoped for. And so I wanted to know, why do you think you didn't achieve everything? What was missing? And how a greater collaboration with people like us, for example, could help? Or, I'm just trying to see what it is that did not work and how it could work if we were to organize ourselves more strongly. And in particular as well, I was thinking, the teachers training programs, have you tried to involve more? I mean, I don't know how it's organized in India, but how teachers training programs could be a place where we could have maybe more impact.
Yeah. Shall we take Arunapal's comments also? Go ahead, Arunapal.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. So I still think that something that you said once, like in the presentation long back in Ambedkar University, and that really worked for me when I went back to the village that I continue to work in. As you probably remember, we run a small school in Bakugan, and I presented a little bit about it in the conference back in Azim Premji University yesterday. One thing that really worked for us, one of both you and Pallavi were there, and you guys discussed that a way to involve little children in the village and to make them interested in the livestock, at least to know and have a deep connection with their own environment, would be to make them do something useful instead of teaching them, instead of telling them. And you said that teach them how to vaccinate chickens and teach them how to vaccinate the livestock, the smaller livestock. And we actually tried it, and it was a runaway success for us. And I remember that a group of 5 children, not more than, they were all in class 5, 6, 7, and they would we would buy the ampules, and from each ampule you can vaccinate so many of these chickens. They would be so quick to catch hold of the chicken and quickly vaccinate them, and that really worked. It inspired a host of teachers in our school to sort of take up that project and do it in the neighboring village, and it worked. And for us, it was not a huge, for us, it was something, if not big in scale, but it was a big learning for us to not, think of as you said, that industrial scaled and systematized, bureaucratized, camps, and also at the same time involve the community to do something at a more sustainable approach. That was a big learning for us. But what happened was that we could not take that energy into rethinking the pedagogic approach of the teachers completely. We did try as part of our action research. It was part of what we were continuously doing. One of my colleagues, Ankita, she was also there in Chachanpur, that village, and she tried using various approaches to rethink pedagogy in that school. We did face a lot of resistance, as you said, but when we persisted, people do pick up some of the more radical approaches to rethink what we are teaching, what is English so important, and even if it is, how do we relate English and make it just does not remain limited to the language, but also to what it brings along with it. So while many teachers and many elders of the community, especially I'm talking about the Shantha community, while they understand it, but at times they still feel that no, but that is necessary. But we try to again, find out those moments of contradiction. When someone breaks their hand, instead of waiting outside the hospital, many of them go to the person who knows how to fix the hand within the village. Not a qualified quote unquote medical practitioner, but definitely with the knowledge to fix the hand. So these moments do inspire us, but as practitioners, we also lose motivation. We lose a lot of energy to pursue it, to continue with it. Would there be a way, and what would be the way to continue, sustain such thought? Definitely not in writing, that I understand, especially in an indigenous setting. But then how?
Pallavi, I think partially in reply to what issues Laura was raising.
Yeah.
So far, when we are saying that how to have more effect in the community, or whether these NGOs with whom they have worked whether they can get excited enough or have strategies to try out some of the ideas that we are telling them in our stories. In the case of one big NGO, where they heard some of these stories, there was a direct collaboration with the university. Pallavi was mentioning about it. So the university had written agreement with that NGO that they would take some of these ideas and try it out in 3 villages. Although the NGO is quite huge, they will try it out in these 3 villages. And there was both financial support as well as we faculty going there, visiting these villages every 3 months. And they were able to start a discussion in the community of what is a good life, what is a good society. And they even managed to visit that village called Mendalekha, which is one of our star stories. And then they started a lot of community or cooperative efforts, both for natural resource management and the kind of things that Arunapal was just now mentioning. In one of the villages, they started working with children. So various things they did start, but then the level of engagement with the university and the level of support of that NGO was very intense. And with that intensity, for at least 3 years, they were able to do a lot of things in creating a democratic forum in the village and so on and so forth. But in the case of another NGO, with whom we worked for 4 years, conducting workshops with these indigenous youths, in 2019, they were able to carry some of these stories to their communities. In fact, almost 120 villages, they were able to do some kind of interaction, telling these stories. But then the lockdown happened and it sort of fizzled out. Nothing much happened there. So now so these are basically NGO staff who have been involved with that NGO for 10 to 15 or 20 years. Many of these staff are local people themselves. They have some level of education. Some might be fairly well educated. But one of the targets which we haven't tried is school teachers. So not depending upon NGOs and staff only, but in the rural areas, there are mostly government schools, and there are these teachers, and some of them might be willing to listen to these stories, to get excited. And we have come to know of some teachers like that. And that is one target which we haven't tried systematically so far. And then, of course, there are other more, what shall I say, slightly more political movements kind of people. And just last week, some of them have approached me that whether we would like to interact with them. So those are some of the other kinds of people which we haven't touched so far. Yeah. Pallavi, you wanted to say something?
No, I just noticed 2 hands up, so let's have their comments.
Correct. Yeah. Stephen.
Sure. Thank you for a fascinating presentation, and the work you're doing is just very interesting. I teach at the University of Maryland and in a college of education. My background is economics and political economy, and for 20 years, I've been teaching a course called Alternative Education, Alternative Development, which is about living utopias, even though I don't phrase it that way. But it's an academic course. We don't interact with the community, which is wonderful what you're doing, and actually getting to work with NGOs, getting to work with communities as part of that. And I guess two questions. One is I'd love to see some of your materials. I don't know if PeDAGoG is able to put together a repository of materials. But that ties to my second question of, we need to be teaching living utopias around the world. We need many more people telling these stories. And I would be interested in any suggestions from anybody in the audience on how we can do more of that. I think a repository of materials would be helpful for that. But we need to promote this so that many more people are doing this and these stories get heard.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly respond some bit more to Laura as to why there is disappointment in what we think we started out and we couldn't achieve, especially around the short courses, because the kind of people we get are in between jobs. They are activists themselves. They have done interesting things. And so we start having a lot of hope from day one when they enter. Sorry, Melanie, I didn't see your hand then. I'll just finish quickly then. Yeah. And then we offer so much. We keep saying, well, let's work together after this course finishes. And here we are ready to support you. We can come to your city. We can help you be the faculty for this course. And hardly except 2 or 3 return to us. And we keep wondering about it. And the thing is that many of them are themselves strapped for funds, or they are stuck in jobs where they have to do a certain kind of work which is anti-living utopia. So their day jobs are like this, but their ideas are like that. And during the pandemic, we thought, oh, everybody's relaxed and, maybe we can start an e-group and start discussing whoever wants to. So we started making these theme-based groups. Whoever wants to work on food, come on, let's have a subgroup of living utopias. So online it was fizzling out. Everyone's, I think, so sometimes in irritation, I tell Sujit, what is the point of doing all this? And then he'll say, well, unless there is more crisis, nobody's looking for an alternative. So let the world collapse and then maybe they'll come. Well, that's in jest, but yeah, that's where the disappointment is in one sense. Haven't tried teacher training colleges, but like how Stephen was saying, I also run I run a course in the education department in the university, which is about alternative education. But then with the university students, it can go anywhere. It doesn't always come back. Sorry, I'll stop. Melanie and then Lawrence.
First, just thank you so much for a very interesting share that really gives insight to possibility. And I suppose that's part of what we're doing here. I teach, I started teaching a course for a while that was Legacies, Realities, and Dreams of a Better Tomorrow. But particularly, I think within the educational system in the US, the reckoning with legacies was so challenging because it really countered what students had learned their whole life. We'd get stuck there. So then I changed it. I said, no, I want it about the creative forms that are already existing, that have always existed, that are expanding in this period of crisis. So that's where I came up with the community, love, and justice, and cover, things from the solidarity economy to Zapatistas. There's 2 things that strike me. One relative to that, within the context of the US, so the NGO is really, you might say, a nonprofit, and the social movement frontier is very consumed with that, which often boundaries pretty rigidly both the vision and the process that can be accomplished. The solidarity economy has potential and has principles that can get incorporated. For example, I have students actually do a time bank amongst themselves, and they're like, what, we can do something without money? And it's very simple, but and enjoyable because it's a social activity. But I think it continuously rubs up against sort of the pull. And again, some of this is particular to US and some of this is very global, but the pull towards co-optation and integration with sort of standard ways of capitalist form. I said to you, Pallavi, that I would love to brainstorm. The other course I taught was with really a decolonizing course, where we had students in Johannesburg and other parts of, because UNISA's online, so it's from other parts of the continent also, actually creating decolonized spaces of institutions of all sorts, architecture, education, healthcare, and so forth. And I think that your sharing of these projects very much lends itself to some kind of, sort of building forward in really helping people to see that we're not constrained in the way that we're led to believe we're constrained. So I'm very excited about what you've shared, and I look forward to talking with you more, one-on-one or collectively, about how we can take these threads that are very interconnected and are about building in this moment and building long-term. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Lawrence, for patiently waiting. So please go ahead.
No, my pleasure to listen to the comments. I just want to start by saying that I also think what you're doing here, Pallavi and Sujit, is wonderful. It's very, very inspiring, and it's challenging as well, challenging pedagogically to think about ways of breaking out of traditional ways of doing things in the academy. I guess I had 3 points or questions that I wanted to raise quickly. The first is, so this is raised by the examples you give. I mean, by the way, I think the title as well is wonderful, and I'm glad to hear that you've been winning these struggles. I've had similar struggles, including words like this in the title of my courses, and I've finally gotten it through the titles just because I think they've given up. I've been pushing it for so long. But I think that the battle over the title raises a larger question, which is the way university administrators and the way people in the university see these things versus the way those who are trying to bridge gaps between academia and worlds of activism, et cetera, see these things. And so I guess my first question is, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how you see yourself breaking from traditional pedagogical practices. Let me just elaborate on what I mean. So you give the example of storytelling and song, and of course, taking people into the communities, and you're thinking of linking up with social movements. But I also think you've highlighted some other interesting things, like, for example, highlighting the interlinkages in all these spheres of civilization. This is something which I find difficult it's very challenging in an academic setting, because the way academics approach these questions is to break them apart into little boxes. We're going to study the politics of technology. We're going to study, sustainability. We're going to study the politics of work or the economics of work. So maybe, that's part of this first question, is how do you break out of those boxes, which the university in particular imposes on us? So that first question is about innovations in pedagogy. The second comment is just, I have to say, because I've just before this meeting and afterwards, it's our marking period. So I'm doing all sorts of marking now. And the marking that I'm doing right now is essays for a master's course. And the essay question, which I posed to students, this is based on the reading of William Morris's News from Nowhere and various works in democratic theory, is a quotation. Democracy is not simply a form of government or a way of govern or a means of electing a government, but a way of life and an ethical ideal of self-rule. Discuss with reference to William Morris's News from Nowhere. Now, the question I have for you is how do you try to link what you're doing with the academic literature in this? So, for example, I mean, I'm throwing at them a lot of democratic theory and trying to stretch their understanding of, you know, models of democracy. How do you link what you're doing, if at all, with the academic literature? And then finally, the last question, just very quickly, this builds on Melanie's interesting contribution. I love the title. I'm going to get it wrong, of Melanie's course. Was it Legacies, Realities, and Dreams of a Better Tomorrow? I think is what she said. I may be wrong. But what that raises for me is the question of temporalities. So what I mean by that is, now it's clear that you're focused on the realities, the living utopias, you know, which is wonderful because that's clearly a gap in academia. But I guess what I find difficult sometimes is linking that with both the past dreams of a better world that may still, in a sense, be living in the present, and also with visions of a better world, the dreaming, the imagining. So how in what you're doing, if at all, do you try to link together those different temporalities?
I'll make Melanie answer your last question because that sort of, I mean, I think it's fascinating. It's a very good question. But let me try, and I'll ask Sujit as well to jump in. But let me try to answer. I must confess, you've hit the spot. You know, I mean, in your second question of how are we linking with academia and academic scholarship, we definitely have a bias, and we use a lot of other material which is not very academic in nature. But we do use, and in fact, Ariel Saleh helped us with her ecofeminism paper that she had put up. We have started using the PeDAGoG network quite a bit. So we used to send our slides and our curation of what we understand on different topics to many of these stalwarts in PeDAGoG. So that's how Ariel Saleh looked at our slides, and she said, well, you know, you need to read this. and we actually sent the Zapatista slide to Gustavo Esteva, and he actually did not respond immediately, but then we managed to get Kinchi to sort of mediate and offer, you know, some comments on what we have been saying, because we did not know so much about the nuances in the history of negotiations of the Zapatistas, and that's where his work was able to help us. So that's a trick that I would encourage everyone to use, because there are a lot of people here whose work has been embedded over the years. For example, Irene, I asked her so much around solidarity economy, and she has herself done so much. And we mapped the donut economics diagram on the kind of Gandhian economics that we are pushing in. And lucky for us, Gandhi is not an academic. He was writing very simply. So we have a lot of literature from that realm, that genre, where there is a space between activism and academia that is recognized, is worked upon. And every time we are in a spot, we say, Gandhi, you know, I mean, this is his way. So we use a lot of Gandhian literature. There is actually just a 2-page letter that he wrote just before his death. And he envisages what the future world, not only for India, but what a future good society can be. And it's written so simply and so briefly, but every line. And in that, I must invoke Sujit's creativity, because he designed a quiz, just like you're doing on William Morris. He designed a quiz, and every single line in that letter, we ask the students to reflect, and we just give 2 marks per line. We say, do not write too much, and brevity is important, and we make all those sorts of noises. But that's a trick. That's how we break some of this and interlinkages. Now, I just want to say that specifically before I ask Sujit to come in. Sujit introduced me to Alvin Toffler, and I introduced Toffler's analysis to everyone else. And it was one way of looking at how things between an economic sphere, corresponds to a political sphere. And we hunt for scholarship very similar to things which are in Indian context. So we also have somebody from India who has written that, participatory direct democracy cannot work if the economics is of industrialism. So in very lucid writings and with examples which are Indian context, we have some scholarship. But that has been a curation of work much before the course started. So we were, having these 2 stalwarts, at least for us in India, Gandhi and Tagore, giving us a lot of these writings and pieces, and we have used them extensively. Sujit, you want to add? Unmute.
I'm saying it's close to 9:30. Does anyone have any? 2 things. First, Stephen, one of the main ideas behind this PeDAGoG group is to create a repository of materials. Unfortunately, we are a little behind. A lot of the members of PeDAGoG, there are more than 100 members, they have shared their materials of various kinds. And we are supposed to put it up on a website so that everyone can access them. So this is something which we need to do. There is a small subcommittee which has been formed, and I'm part of it, but I haven't done my work yet. So that is one of them. So another question, which is somewhat related, someone raised this about language, that when you are going beyond your university setting, when you are trying to work with the community, what about the issue of language? Especially in India, all of us working in the university space are not used to delivering a course in the vernacular. Now, I and Pallavi have done this Living Utopias in Hindi, and currently I'm doing it in Bengali. But there are almost 30 recognized vernacular languages in India, and that's a lot of work. It has to be done in vernacular. But even more important for us is creating materials in the indigenous languages. And that is something which is even more difficult, but we feel it has to be done. But the second issue with language is that what kind of reading material do you create? Even for our university students, and when we are going to the community, they cannot read academic articles, right? They cannot even read newspaper articles if they are long, right? And so for them, you have to create materials which are small, 500 to 1,000 words, and where the language is very simple. And even if you are talking about some concepts, you have to give a lot of examples for them to understand. And this is also something with which I and Pallavi are struggling, how to create materials for them. But then this is again related to the other kind of material, which is audiovisual materials. And there also a lot of good material is there in English, but for many of our audience, that is of not much use. So a lot of dubbing has to be done. lot of audio materials has to be created in the vernacular. Things like, I think in most countries before the TV came, radio plays used to be very popular, right? So that is something which need to be revived. So many kinds of other kind of material we need to develop when we are talking about the kind of target group for our kind of courses. Yeah.
Yeah, we are actually on a hunt for somebody who can write a satire piece, a theater script, and that's the kind of work we are hoping that university students pick up. But it's the last semester, they are hung up on jobs, they enjoy the academies that they have learned and picked up. So it's not coming from the university. So we have to change our audience and see other ways. Yeah.
Anyone else would like to make some comment or? I'll just give.
Sujit, there's one hand up.
Yes.
Dan, go
Dan,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, many thanks for a really fascinating presentation or series of presentations and fascinating reflections and questions. I'm based in the Brazilian Amazon right now, and I would love to be able to share with you responses to some of these questions through a living example that we have created, which is a community university of the rivers. So I guess if I reflect on this simply, it would be to say something like, I felt it wasn't possible to do the kinds of work of creating living utopias from within a university structure. And we invented, with permission from no one, a community university which resolves many of the questions you guys have raised, so that the community shapes the university rather than the university tries to collaborate well with communities. And so we use all the artistic languages, particularly from popular culture, in order to both learn and to exchange knowledge. And the university itself is based in 380 families, kitchens, and front rooms, and doorways, and windows. But all of the pedagogies emerge not just from popular culture, but from the creation of an eco-village. So the whole community is focused on that. And they don't work according to a syllabus, but they've worked through a 10-year process, and they're now preparing the second 10-year process. I just sort of saying, I think it's really fascinating, but I'm reminded of so many of the challenges that I faced while I was working within a university trying to do this in Wales. And the knowledge has come from, and the impulse for creating this university, really, this community university, was because the federal university in the region, in the Amazon, was trying to do its best and couldn't connect really with the rhythms of life, but most importantly, couldn't relate the indigenous knowledges or the community knowledges to the structures that the university needed to impose. So in many ways, the motivation of the university practitioners was powerful, but it wasn't possible for them to then translate that into pedagogies, which could enable the communities to actually guide rather than just to receive. But it's for another time, but I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to say that there is extraordinary work being done, which I think is not on the radar, but it's very well documented, it's very well analyzed, and it's using very, very innovative kind of pedagogies, which are also ancestral. They're not just
written, and they're not just oral. You know, it'd be lovely to. I think this answers the question that Laura asked at the very beginning, which is how can we work together in a way that where we can share the models that we've developed or the paradigms we've developed. Last point. I remember studying very well William Morris, and not just William Morris, but I guess I made a decision about 30 or 40 years ago to base my supervisors were Raymond Williams and Terry Eagleton. So I was working with people. It was really almost impossible to continue in a university cultural context and institutional disciplines after being educated by those people. But I think it would be worth having. The last reflection is, I think we need to think about our Zoom structures, you know, to make them as dialogic as possible. And I think we need a little more time to be able to share and exchange knowledges. But thank you very much. It's been a wonderful morning.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's wonderful. In fact, you know, Dan, this is the first experimental meeting we are having in PeDAGoG. And we were wondering how it will go. And what you are saying actually gives me an idea of what the next meeting could be. So yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So as I was telling,
Sorry, Sujit, there's one more hand. Just
correct. Yeah. Kindly go ahead.
Hi everyone. This is sorry I missed the first part of the session today, and I'm also very new to PeDAGoG. I teach in the Department of Computer Science at IIT Delhi, and I've also been working a lot on the ground. I help run a social enterprise called Gramvani, which has been working for many years in some technology projects in rural areas of India. So I was basically prodded by Dan's point that such kinds of structures are difficult to build in a university setup, and I completely agree with that. So what I wanted to ask, and if as PeDAGoG develops the material, are we thinking about means through which we can channel this into existing apps? So what sort of networks could we use? Have you thought about, so I don't know, there are networks like the NSS, which are quite popular like here in IIT Delhi. I've not interacted much with them, but do you think such kind of setups could be useful as channels so that we can get this awareness and these ideas and thoughts into the existing university structures, which tend to be very top down, very technology deterministic, and like give new perspectives to the students?
Yeah, I mean, there are various channels are there, and there are challenges also there. So we'll have to see. NSS, of course, is one such channel, but yeah, we can try that. But I guess I would like to repeat that already a lot of the members have shared a lot of their materials, and that is something which we need to put up as a repository so that we can see what various people are doing, and we can go ahead from there. It's already 9:40.
Sujit, I don't think you can see the hands, so I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, Lawrence again. Yes. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Just very quickly, I know that you're about to finish. It's almost the time is up, but just to say, first that so what Dan was saying gave me a wonderful idea. I mean, I would love, but of course this depends on interest on maybe his part. I would love for one of the next meetings, obviously this is only our first, to hear more about this project in the Amazon and to actually see what it looks like, if that's possible through Zoom, to get more of a feel rather than just hearing the description. And I think for me that would be, and I hope, I would expect for others, would be very, very valuable. So I would love to see that. And second, just in response to what Pallavi was saying earlier, oh, and by the way, just to say to Dan, that I also studied, or my dissertation was examined by Terry Eagleton on Morris. And I felt, you know, I've been in academia for so many years now, but I've always felt like I'm coming up against limits that, you know, what I want to do cannot be done within the structures that I work. So I do my best, you know, within the very significant constraints of those structures. But maybe we can find ways to link, you know, what's useful, even if it's maybe small, in the academy to what's being done in such communities as the one that you're referring to and living in. That just very quickly in response to what Pallavi was saying, you know, maybe as well there's, you know, because you were saying that was a gap in what you were doing, the engagement with the academic literature. And I don't know if this would be helpful, but I'd be happy to share more and exchange more with you, in particular about, you know, some of the literature that I've found useful, which I think might be useful for what you're trying to do, to make that offer.
Thank you. Thank you. You made two offers, one to Dan and one to me, and both are so valuable. And I hope we can convince Dan to do the next meeting. And from Educare, PeDAGoG, it doesn't matter, whichever hat you wear. I mean, if you can, yeah, definitely offer us your insights. And Lawrence, I want to take you up on that. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I guess we should end now. We have crossed more than 10 minutes. And we'll catch hold of Dan now for the next meeting. Yeah.
Can I just say quickly that I'd be very happy to contribute in any way that's useful. And just to say, I've put a video link in the chat, which may be one way of actually using time differently, which is to say that we prepare for a dialogue together. Right. And then it's immediately not confined by what can be said in 10 or 15 minutes, but it's already then a dialogue about a living paradigm or a living, as it were, utopia in construction. But I think this seems to me like a very rich potential, this space. Thanks.
No more hands.